Hiya guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. The end of another week, the end of another poll. We've got a fantastic win for 13th Age. Now this was a suggestion from a viewer, and this is something I'm absolutely adoring. Not only am I getting to share some of the love for the books and games from my collection, but you're getting to share the love for some of the games in your collections with me. And we stick them in the poll, and if they win, then I get to look through and experience something brand new. And these have been fantastic suggestions so far. Now, if you've got any ideas for anything I should cover, then please make it in the comments down below. We'll put it in a poll, we'll vote on it, and we shall see if I get to experience something brand new. Anyway, as usual, I'll be going over on this on the desktop, as it's a PDF review, so it's going to be on the computer. And I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel-related stuff and some other poll-related stuff. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week, I've been told, are extremely generous with their healing potions, which is just like them, because they're generous with their time and their effort in helping support this channel. So if you'd like to join them, and I sure wish you would, and help support the channel, then there's a Patreon in the description down below. You can get access to these videos a week early, and we've got some other Patreon levels. If you'd like to check them out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at 13th Age. So, this is 13th Age, which came out in 2013 from Pelgrane Press. And it's a fantasy game, first of all, but it's a Dungeons & Dragons alike. It's a reworking of the standard Dungeons & Dragons type game, with some interesting ideas put in. Now, obviously, this won the poll this week. This was something that was introduced to me, so I had a very short time to look through it. I've maybe had 24 hours. But there's some fascinating ideas in here. I'm obviously going to skip through a bunch of stuff, but hopefully I'll be able to introduce you to a whole bunch of great stuff in here, which makes it worthwhile having a look through. But, as I said, it's kind of Dungeons & Dragons, so we've got the normal attributes, we've got strength, dex, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, all the standard stuff in there. And we've got the standard races, we've got elves, dwarves, humans, halflings, and we've got the standard classes. We've got barbarians, we've got bards, and all of the others. But it's how it handles these which is quite interesting, because it's recognisable as Dungeons & Dragons, and I don't think you'd have a huge problem transferring over. But the way it works these things are fascinating. There's some great ideas in here. Even in only 24 hours, there's some bits which have really got me enthused. Now, it's quite a bulky book, so I'm going to be skimming through it quite quickly. 322 pages. Opening up, we can see the artwork style is absolutely lovely. It's very clearly laid out, and we've got playtesters here, we've got the page of contents, an introduction to it, chapter by chapter introduction, and then we're going on to the first chapter, which introduces the icons. Now, these are the big players in the world. So, but instead of putting them in the background, manipulating everything, 13th Age brings them forward and ties them into everything. So, what have we got? We've got the Archmage, the Crusader, the Diabolist, the Dwarf King, the Elf Queen, the Emperor, the Great Gold Worm, the High Druid, the Lich King, the Orc Lord, the Priestess, the Prince of Shadows, and the Three. And these will be things that the players will tie their backgrounds into. You know, you were part of a group who was trying to overthrow the Lich King and failed, and that's why you're out adventuring. So, it all weaves into the background and builds up your characters to be part of this world from initial creation. So we've got the Archmage. The Archmage has preserved the Empire for centuries and created astonishing new lands. The Crusader, the armoured fist of the Dark Gods. So long as followers of the Gods of Light stay the hell out of his way, the Crusader turns his wrath against the demons that would destroy the world. The Diabolist controls fiends and tampers with forces even the Archmage avoids. The Dwarf King, a Lord of Forge, the dwarves' new homeland beneath the mountains. The Elf Queen rules the Court of Stars, the one place where Wood Elves, Dark Elves, and High Elves come together as peers and allies. The Emperor rules the world's greatest human kingdom, known as the Dragon Empire. The Great Gold Worm is the world's protector and the inspiration for holy orders of paladins and independent heroes. The High Druid, the champion of the resurgent wild and the spiritual and magical leader of spirits of nature. The Lich King, the Lord of the Undead, a fallen tyrant who intends to conquer the Dragon Empire and restore his ancient kingdom. The Orc Lord. For centuries, the Orc Lord is nothing but an old story, sometimes forgotten. The previous Orc Lord helped bring down the Wizard King, who has now become the Lich King. The Priestess. He is all of God's light and speaks for those who please her. The Prince of Shadows is a trickster who exploits reshape the world nearly as often as they redistribute its wealth. And the Three, the first dragons to walk the world. And we've got their alignments, from your standard grid, so lawful good through to chaotic evil. As I said, the artwork's very, very nice. We've got character rules, basically going through the standard Dungeons & Dragons options. We've got humans, dwarves, dark elves, high elves, wood elves, gnomes, half-elves, halflings and half-orcs. And we've got classes: barbarian, bard, cleric, fighter, paladin, ranger, rogue, sorcerer and wizard. We generate ability scores, armor class, we've got first level hit points, physical defense, mental defense, initiative, recovery dice, your one unique thing. And different examples of the one unique thing. Icon relationships. Carrying on through, and backgrounds and skill checks, so assigning background points as you're creating, making skill checks. Because this is one of the games where instead of having a skill like climbing, you'll create a background where you are a circus acrobat, so you'll get bonuses on climbing type things. I'm not a big fan of using skills that way. It is interesting to weave that into your story, but it becomes a competition about who can make the most flexible background, which gives them the most advantages possible, instead of making something interesting. I did this in a previous game where I created a background which really suited my character, but would never give me any advantages. And people in my group slagged me off because I had a useless background. But we go through that, a short list of possible backgrounds. We've got feats, which are as standard in Dungeons & Dragons. Even many of the names match. Although we do have racial feats, barbarian feats, bard feats, so we've got specific ones for the races and the classes. Carrying on through, we've got gear, different types of general goods, the various shopping you can do. And this is part of the game which isn't massively important, the goods that is, because a sword will do a standard amount of damage. It doesn't matter what kind of sword you're carrying. It's all descriptive if you're wanting to be using a rapier or a scimitar or a cutlass. They all work the same way. Standard one-handed swords do one amount of damage, two-handed swords do a higher amount of damage, and that's it. There's no other bonuses you get for having a particularly fancy sword. And the other weapons work the similar way. It's not important. Armor as well works by your class. So the same set of armor worn by a fighter might be more effective than when it's worn by a cleric, for example. Anyway, we've got the races and race powers. Humans are quick to fight. Dwarves is your best shot. Half-orcs are lethal. Dark elves are cruel. High elves have high blood teleport. Wood elves have elven grace. The three shards of the elven people. Gnomes are confounding and have minor illusions. Half-elves are surprising. And halflings are evasive. We've got optional races, so it mentions like Draconic Dragonspawn, Holy One Asimars, Forgeborn Dwarfforged, Tieflings, Demon Touched, and gives you some suggestions for how those work. And then we're on to the classes. Now this is where it really came interesting for me. Haven't had the chance to read all of the classes, but the ones I've read through are pretty interesting. So we've got things like Bard, where their songs do different effects. Not only do you have different DCs, so the higher target number you reach, the more effective your Bard song is, but they can have different effects as you level up. So the same song will become more powerful. Battle cries, level songs, Clerics, their spells as well are really quite interesting, the way they work differently. So, if I can find the healing one, oh, bless, there we go. So, you can cast for power, or you can cast for broad effect. So, the bless spell, as we all know, give people a benefit. A +2 to their attack bonus if you cast it on one person. Or you can cast it on a group, and 3 people will get a +1. So there's more pluses getting split around, but it's lower. So you can target to channel your power, or you can target to spread it around. And most of the spells work that way. So you can heal a single person, or you can heal a group for lesser amounts. It's interesting. It gives people options, and that's one of the things that 13th Age seems to do, which is really, really interesting. The fighter is the one I really got enthused about, because a fighter is a kind of boring thing. It's something I haven't played in years. But in 13th Age, I think I would play a fighter. Because fighters have special maneuvers. If we flick over a few pages, we've got maneuvers they get. Flexible melee attacks. And it's not a matter of you learning these and then using them. They require certain events to happen to be able to use them. So instead of you going, oh, I'm going to use cleave or whatever, feet, every round, these, you roll your dice, you make your attack, and then you see what options you have available to make combat more interesting. So, your level 1 maneuver, brace for it, is if you miss. You've attacked an enemy and you've missed. So you use your maneuver instead. And until the end of your next turn, the first critical hit you take from a melee attack becomes a normal hit instead. So you've missed, but you can absorb more damage. You're bracing to take that. And some of them are quite interesting. You've got Carve an Opening, where the triggering roll is any odd number. And Deadly Assault is any even number. So you're rolling your dice, seeing what options are available to you in combat, and then choosing from them. So the combat's not just roll, hit, use your most powerful ability. It's roll, hit, see what's available to you, which makes fighting far more interesting. And given these are leveled, so you're getting more at 3rd level, 5th level, 7th level, and 9th level, as your character's going up, they got more and more maneuvers available to them, more and more options. That kind of makes a fighter really fascinating to me, and excites me. We've got paladins, rangers, rogues, sorcerers. Again, I haven't read through these in detail. There's some interesting stuff in there. They do work slightly differently to normal. And wizards. All the spells are included in the section on the class, which I like, instead of having a big bulky spell book at the back, which tends to make everybody very samey because they're all picking from the same spell lists. We've got the combat rules. Unarmed attacks, death and dying, all the usual sort of stuff. Temporary hit points, teleportation, how all that works. How to run the game. Using icon relationships, rolling relationships at the start of a session. Building battles. Leveling up, incremental advance. One of the points I've kind of skipped over in the combat section is there's an advancing feature in battle where basically each round the combat gets on, the players get a bonus. So as a combat wears on and wears on, the players are getting more effective, which is a nice thing to do. And there's also certain abilities which trigger on that. You can't use it until you've got a 3-point advantage because the combat's gone on 3 rounds. And it's really interesting that you'd be hanging on in a battle and then gaining access to more abilities as it goes on. World and icons, thinking of the icons as gods. And then we've got a section on monsters. Now the monster list going from giant ants, ogres, trolls, all the sort of usual stuff. I do think it's a bit odd there's no pictures of the monsters here. We've got these sort of heads, maybe. But it's not detailed pictures. But I suppose by this point we kind of know what the monsters look like. This isn't a game for beginners. Different types of dragons, driders, ghouls, giants, goblins, loads and loads of pages of this, hellhounds, a hungry star, lizard men, phase spiders, different types of skeletons. So we've not only got a skeleton, but we've got decrepit skeletons, skeletal hounds, skeleton archer, skeleton warrior, black amber skeletal legionnaire. So you've got variety as a games master. You don't just have a skeleton, you've got all these options to draw from. And that really does seem to be the bonus of 13th Age, that it's giving everybody options. It's giving the games master options, it's giving the players options. Sorry, that's DIY monsters, so making up your own monsters. The Dragon Empire, so this is the default setting, although obviously 13th Age can just be used as a type of rules. You could start using 13th Age rule systems and classes and races with the Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance or whatever setting you wanted. But this is the world of it. Axis City of Swords, the Cathedral, Cloudhome, the Flying Realms. This is a section I'm really not familiar with. I haven't really read up on the world. Then we're on to magic items. So magic items are a bit more different again because the equipment is so standardized. So magic items become a bit more interesting. But it's talking about magic items of particular use to the different classes. We've got cloaks, necklaces, staffs, different types of weapons, cursed magic items, how to create magic items. So we've got Blood and Lightning, which is the introductory adventure. Introduces players to using icon relationships and the combat system at first and second level adventurers. I'm not going to go through that. They face off some goblins, they visit some locations. It seems interesting enough and well built to introduce you to the game. We've got the character sheet, which looks kind of familiar. Obviously, there's no big skills section because we're just using the backgrounds. We've got feats, we've got talents, we've got the attributes across here, your hit points, the usual stuff for Dungeons & Dragons. It's just missing that big skill list. Appendix B, stat arrays, index and glossary. The icons index. And the open game license, because this is an OGL. Lots of tables, and again, right at the back, a character sheet. And it's just one-sided. Now, that's 13th Age. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here. As I said, I've really only just skimmed it. I've only had 24 hours to look through it. But there's elements here which have already got me really excited. The classes are really fascinating. I'm going to come back and I'm going to read through more and more of the classes. Obviously, I'll do a rules breakdown to show how this is different from standard D&D. I'll probably release that next week. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep reading through this because there's so much to like. It is an absolutely brilliant idea. I like the idea of introducing some of this, and in fact, the book itself talks about using it within your standard Dungeons & Dragons, taking elements from it, and how to merge these into a standard game. So that was 13th Age. Some absolutely brilliant stuff in there. An absolute joy to look through. And as I said, I'll be doing a rules breakdown in a week or so's time, and if I've discovered anything more, we'll talk about it then, because there are some great ideas in there. But that won the poll this week with some 34% of the vote. But for the early part of the week, it was tied with the second place, The Denizens of Earthdawn book, Volume 2, which ended up on 28%. But as I said, they were neck and neck in the early part of the week, and I thought I was finally getting a chance to do Earthdawn again. But it's been an absolute joy to cover 13th Age. In third place was World Book 15, Spirit West, for Rifts. And in final place, neck and neck on 11%, was Contenders for the Street Fighter RPG and the Black Furies Tribe book for Werewolf the Apocalypse. All of which we enjoyed to cover, but it was great to look at something absolutely new to me. Now, as usual, they're all cleared out, and we're going back to a Retro Adventures poll. But this week, I'm putting in some more obscurities. We're not going with any of the big games which usually attract the votes, so there's no Cthulhu, there's no Shadowrun, there's no Dungeons & Dragons, and there's no Star Wars in this one. we're going for some of the oddities. So first of all, we've got K for Dawn for 2300 AD. Now, I don't know much about this. 2300 AD seemed like a very interesting game when I looked through the rulebook, but looking through the bundle adventure to see how adventures are structured in that world would be absolutely fascinating. Second up, we've got Your Own Private Idaho for Price of Freedom. Now this is one of my favourite games because it's so tongue-in-cheek. I bought this as a reward to myself for my 1,000 subscribers, and I absolutely adore it. But I haven't had a chance to cover any of the source books for it yet, so it'd be a joy to cover the only adventure, I think, which was published for it. After that, we've got The Perfect Warrior for the Street Fighter RPG. Yep, I love the Street Fighter RPG, and it'd be great to cover this because it's just such an oddity compared to everything else that White Wolf Publishing did. Then we've got Scared Stiffs for the Ghostbusters role-playing game. Now, I've covered a couple of things for the Ghostbusters role-playing game. They were absolutely brilliant, and it'd be great to move on to another adventure and get a chance to cover it. Especially this, which I think is probably my favourite of the Ghostbusters RPG adventures. But we shall see what wins. But finally, we've got San Francisco Knights for Cyborg Commando. Now, Cyborg Commando is a bit of a joke in my world because it was Gary Gygax's game that you went on to after Dungeons & Dragons, a science fiction one where you play giant cyborg commandos. But the game itself didn't make a lot of sense. It was a bit silly. But it'd be a joy to look through an adventure, see if they made some common sense as the adventures came out, because there were 3 published adventures for it. But it's in your hands now. What else have I been up to? Well, over on DriveThruRPG, I've been releasing some more cyberpunk things for 5th edition. Been doing books of villains and books of sidekicks. And I'm going to be going over to more generic NPCs for the different settings I've been doing. Victorian, cyberpunk, modern horror, and post-apocalyptic. Before, I've got some other ideas coming up. But we shall get to those in time. Now, if you're interested in those, there's a link to DriveThruRPG in the description down below. But also, if you're a patron of Laird or Librarian status, you get access to a shared Google Drive where all of these things are shared with you. Some over 400 booklets now. Over RPG Gamer, well, I'm working my way through the Bad Batch. I'm doing all the stats for the episodes, going through it episode by episode, and as soon as that's over, I'll be moving on to reviewing and statting out the Tales of the Empire episodes. And I think there's more television series coming up. I'd been planning to do the old Knights of the Old Republic comic book series, but they're just releasing so much for Star Wars at the moment that I'm trying to get through all of that first. But anyway, as usual, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.